Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, the mistakes we've made. Content, warning, some swearing. The only problem with breaking into your neighbor's house is if someone else beats you to it. The Mastersons are gone for the month, summering in Fiji or Acapulco, or wherever people go when they're filthy rich and can afford to flaunt it by using words like summering. Before leaving, they'd asked me to watch their house. For free, of course. I smiled and told them they had nothing to worry about. It wasn't until their blue Bugatti sped down our dead-end street that I finally uncrossed the fingers hiding behind my back. Burglary 101. A good heist is all about patience. For 2 weeks now, I've spent night after sweaty July night sequestered in my stuffy attic with my telescope trained on the Masterson house, their backyard swimming pool, their organic vegetable garden, their novelty chicken mailbox. Think Rear Window. Only I'm not as handsome as James Stewart. Why wait so long? Because breaking into someone's house the first week they're on vacation is so predictable, and the second week even less subtle. But the third week, no one ever suspects that third week, which is probably why, right now, during the middle of the third week, as I'm zipping up my black coveralls and adjusting my ski mask, as I'm stooping down to peer through my telescope, which has become a worse habit for me than day drinking, I can feel my heart free fall its way to the basement. Across the street, the shadow of a person creeps toward my neighbor's veranda. It's almost midnight. Everything is dark outside, like a chocolate cake when you don't bake it right, and the person shines a dim light in front of them. I hold my breath as they reach the door's smart lock. Their fingers bounce around the keypad with all the dexterity of a fat kid in a confectionery shop. Then the numbers light up and the door swings open and they slip inside the house. I wait a few more minutes, expecting to see a light bulb spark to life in one of the windows, when the place remains unlit. I grab my cell phone and a black hefty bag, and then I'm off, gliding across my house to the front door. Think risky business, only I'm not as smooth as Tom Cruise. I'll be honest with you. When I arrive at the Mastersons, fulfilling my promise to watch their house is the furthest thing from my mind. Really, I just don't want whoever's inside to take all the good shit before I get a chance. The smart lock keypad awaits my touch. My fingers move with all the dexterity of a fat kid running a mile. But the numbers still brighten, and the door swings open, coaxed by the passcode that I'd obtained after several months of attic telescoping. Inside, The house is as dark and chocolate cakey as outside. The scent of vanilla lingers in the air, sprayed every 15 minutes via one of the house's 1,000 automatic air fresheners. From the kitchen comes the sound of a cabinet being opened, wine glasses clinking. Using my phone's flashlight, I make my way toward the noise and hope whoever's in there hasn't yet discovered Mrs. Masterson's 60-piece bone china dinner set. I'm not sure what exactly you're supposed to say to someone who's hunched over and dumping a whole drawer of silverware into a burlap sack. So I aim my flashlight at their back and settle for a classic. Hi, how's it going? Nice and casual, not too confrontational, with a hint of politeness. Maybe I am as smooth as Tom Cruise. My words come as the last knife in the drawer hits the bottom of the sack. In an instant, the person drops both drawer and sack, grabs something from their waist, clicks a button. Blue light appears like magic. A thin strand of electricity crackles to life. Pointing the taser gun at me, she shouts, "Put your hands up and don't fucking move." I'll be honest with you. I've always thought people who talk about love at first sight were full of it. But now, standing there in front of this woman, because there's no doubt the voice belongs to a woman, I get what they mean. Think of the most beautiful woman you've seen. Sandra Bullock, probably. Then imagine her standing there, pointing a stun gun at you in your neighbor's kitchen. Legs like a desert oasis, curves like a rainbow, brown hair flowing down her back as she straightens her trigger finger. Because that's exactly what this woman is like. At least, I imagine so. She's wearing a black latex catsuit and a matching ski mask that make her look formless in the veil of night, even in the taser's blue glow. Not 1 inch of skin showing. But sometimes, a voice is all you need to really know someone. That's how all my previous relationships have started, with a voice. And those were nice, while they lasted. Whoa, 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 I say, taking a few steps back and turning off my phone's flashlight to show her I'm harmless. I come in peace. Who are you? The words bubble like acid rain. My feet take another step back without asking my brain. The taser is still aimed at my chest. I'm the Mastersons' neighbor. I point vaguely in the direction of my house. She starts to close one eye like she's about to open fire, so I add, and believe it or not, I'm here to do the same thing you're doing. Slowly, finally, she lowers her weapon, so now it's aimed at my crotch. It's a small victory. I take what I can get these days. I want her to trust me, so I run my hand along the wall in search of the light switch. If she could only see the hefty bag in my hand, she'd know where we stand. At last, the switch pricks my thumb, and all at once, we're bathed in pure white light. Cut that shit off, she hisses. And it's like Jesus himself said the words. They sound so beautiful. And so is she, probably. But the light switch clicks, and it's dark again. She looks out the window, swivels her head from end to end of the sidewalk. Then she taps a button on her taser, and the blue crackling is gone, replaced by a regular flashlight, which she shines directly in my eyes. "Are you trying to get me caught? Sorry." "Unbelievable," she mutters, and crouches to pick up her burlap sack, leaving the silverware drawer on the floor. The sliver of moonlight from the window makes her look like an angel. An angel who's approaching the 60-piece bone china collection with my name on it. I rap on the wall twice, and it works. She stops, turns to face me. The moonlight reveals only the left side of her ski mask. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot," I say, peeling off my own mask with one hand and offering a truce with the other. "I'm Mac, by the way." She stares at my proffered hand, like she doesn't want to contract whatever form of leprosy I have. The night air is a blanket, heavy and warm around us, filled with the songs of crickets and cicadas. We stand there, listening to the house groan under our feet. Above our heads, the ski mask feels like a dumbbell in my hand. "This is usually the part where you tell me your name." "No," the woman says, arcing her taser flashlight across the adjoining living room. She marches to the baby grand piano in the corner, no doubt trying to devise a way to wheel it into the night. Okay, I'll just call you Jenny," I say, following her. That was my last girlfriend's name, which is information that was supposed to stay in my head before my mouth sabotaged me. But now it's too late. The words bridge the space between us like a Chinese finger trap, binding us together as accomplices. She pauses, one hand poised atop a stack of outdated sheet music. Beethoven or Bach or Mariah Carey. Turning around, she stares at me behind her ski mask and opens her glossy mouth. It doesn't matter that she showed up to a robbery wearing lipstick. It doesn't matter that she almost tased me 2 minutes ago. My heartbeat quickens all the same, and my blood rushes to places where it probably shouldn't be. Slowly, finally, she says, "Shut up, Max," and dumps the music into her sack, Mariah Carey and all. And it doesn't even matter that she got my name wrong. She could read the yellow pages, cover to cover, and I would listen forever, falling asleep and waking up to the sound of her voice every day. So, yes, I shut up. We shuffle to separate corners of the living room and inspect our potential treasures. And let me tell you, it's the longest 5 minutes of silence in my life. But then, as I'm snatching a handful of angelfish from the Masterson's aquarium and tossing them into my garbage bag, curiosity creeps up on me like it's driving a free candy van. I can't help but to ask, how did you get past the smart lock anyway? It took me weeks of watching with my telescope to get the numbers. I cringe hearing the word meeks, a hasty overcorrection, when I opted not to tell her how long my spying has actually been going on. Jenny scoffs from across the room, where she's trying desperately to pry a taxidermied deer head from its throne above the mantelpiece. Really? You couldn't figure out 1234? She turns and gives me a dismissive shake of her head. They're boomers. It's not frickin' rocket science. Another candy van question slips out. Why are you doing this? She sighs and stops tugging, but keeps her hands on the antlers. I'm just taking what I'm owed. That's all, she says. Her voice is different than before, softer maybe. I mean, seriously, these people can go to Acapulco for a month, but they can't afford to pay their employees a decent wage. So it was Acapulco, I murmur. You know something? I'd probably be home right now watching Netflix if Ed weren't so fucking stingy. Whether she means Mr. Edwin Masterson or Mrs. Edna Masterson, it's impossible to say. And I don't feel it's my place to ask. I see. What about you? Jenny has given up on the deer head, opting for the floor-to-ceiling bookshelf instead. They aren't paying you right either. I could tell her the truth, that the Mastersons have never wronged me, have always invited me to their cookouts and their Christmas parties, that I'm just a guy with too much time on his hands, all the time in the world, and something to prove, that I'm invading someone else's life tonight to try to find some meaning in my own, that I'm a spineless, indecisive loser, and I'm destined to let the world walk all over me. That last one is what my previous girlfriend told me anyway. Old Jenny. But that was 3 years ago. People can change in that amount of time, right? I would never have thought of breaking into this house 3 years ago. If that's not change, I don't know what is. New Jenny is staring at me, awaiting my answer. Yeah, something like that, I tell her, plunging my hand back into the aquarium. Figures. She flings a tattered Gutenberg Bible into her burlap sack. Hypocrites. Chad. Burglary 201. Always use the toilet before a heist. When I return from the bathroom, couldn't have been in there more than 5 minutes. The living room is abandoned. From the kitchen comes the rattle of a teacup and a saucer. And then I know this woman is no angel. In the kitchen, Jenny stands on her tiptoes to reach the top of the cabinet. She curls a few fingers around a piece of Mrs. Masterson's bone china, a white teacup with floral patterning. It is the penultimate item in the cabinet. What the hell are you doing? I say, as she lowers her body, cup in hand. My voice louder than expected, ricochets off the now empty walls. Like a pinball, she startles, then slips her present into her sack. A reverse Santa Claus. What does it look like? You're taking my bone china set, is what it looks like. Jenny shrugs and points to the lone piece in the cabinet. A plain-looking white saucer with gold trim. All yours. Have at it. No. I grab my soggy, hefty bag from its spot by the aquarium. Stretch it as wide as it'll go. Give me half. The air freshener on the wall vomits vanilla mist as Jenny cocks her head. So, she says, nodding at the cabinet. Do you want it or not? Half, I demand. She snorts and shakes her head. Done with me. Hauling her sack, she troops down the hallway toward the bathroom. I have to stop myself from grabbing her arm. The equation is simple arithmetic. She has a taser. I don't. The saucer is an orphan in its cupboard, waiting for someone to take pity on it. It's cool to the touch in my longing fingertips. My hefty bag is still gaping like a hungry, hungry hippo. But I slide the saucer in my breast pocket for safekeeping. The toilet flushes, and Jenny emerges from the bathroom, still dragging her riches. She frowns when she sees me standing there. You know, I think I misjudged you, Jenny. You're not an angel at all. You know that? Her laugh is like the curtains bulging from her sack, velvety and hideous. Oh, I'm not an angel? Breaking news? More at 11. Her taser flashlight falls on my trash bag. What? You think you're some kind of saint? These people aren't my neighbors. I'm supposed to be watching the house, actually, I confess. That's really why I'm here. Mr. Masterson put his faith in me. Well, you're doing a great job. Jenny opens a hallway closet and inspects Mrs. Masterson's collection of mink coats as though she's in a bookstore, contemplating life's hardest decision. Paperback or hardcover? Let me know if you need a letter of recommendation. My face feels like it's summering in Acapulco. The novelty of Jenny's sarcasm has worn off. Now it leaves me grinding my teeth. Look, I'm gonna step outside, I tell her, tapping the imaginary vape pen in my pocket. I need a smoke break. 10 minutes, max, Jenny commands, with all the authority of a Walmart manager. I'm still wondering if that meant maximum, or if she'd simply mispronounced my name again when I stumble out into the night. A hot, gentle breeze greets me on the sidewalk, a gift from the passing cars on the next block. My house sits across the street, pale and lonely and devoid of bone china. The telescope in the attic is pointed directly at me, watching. The Mastersons' novelty chicken mailbox taunts me. They are all waiting for me to do what it is I actually came out here for. Why not? Why not fulfill my promise? Just so she can walk away with my dinner set while I get to drag some dead fish home. It only takes a few taps of my phone. Then a voice on the other end comes through, high-pitched and much too perky. 911. What's your emergency? Hi. How's it going? Yeah, hey, my house is being broken into right now, I say, and pray this woman doesn't know what Mr. Masterson sounds like as I give her the address. She's got a mountain of questions for me high as Everest, and I listen to myself answer them. Only I'm talking on autopilot because I'm too busy thinking about the two Jennies, old and new. How old Jenny would have called me spineless for what I'm doing now, turning someone in while being part of the problem. How new Jenny came here tonight because she wanted to right a wrong, because she believed in something. At least one of us has a good reason. And that gets me thinking, she can't be all bad, right? Maybe not an angel, but not all bad. She did let me have the last saucer. Maybe we just started off on the wrong foot. Maybe we could get to know each other better. Maybe then she'd even tell me her name. The operator is still talking a mile a minute when I interrupt. Hold on, I think. I think there are 2 people in the house now. Yes, another one just joined. And when I feed her the Masterson's address again, I whisper, please come quickly. But I'll be honest with you. That last part is for dramatic effect, just to see how long it'll take someone to show up to a fancy place like this. 5 minutes, 10, what do I care? I have all the time in the world. The operator tells me it won't be long, that they're sending someone right now to come help. She asks me to stay calm and remain where I am. So I stroll to the front door. I can hear Jenny's voice before my feet touch the porch, cussing one of the Eds out as she lugs her sack across the marble floor. Her bone china jingles in the night like a plea, begging my lone saucer to partake. I retrieve it from my pocket, give it a squeeze, and step inside, ready to see the mistakes we've made. Hoodwinked. The only thing worse than tracing a witness 5 years after is to find out he has forgotten all about the crime, or at least the bits that matter. But Detective Syed was no greenhorn. He smiled at the 19-year-old who was sitting across the table devouring his second plate of chicken kafriel. So, is the chicken tangy enough? Yes, Detective. Thank you for buying me lunch. Daniel D'Souza grinned, his cheeks still plump with the spicy treat tucked in. Not at all. Thanks for agreeing to meet me here. Detective Syed swirled the sparkling water, then took another swig. It was a hot April afternoon, and Baga Beach looked bare. I know it's hard for you to talk about it, but what you can tell me can save a life. The fork fell into the green sauce, and the young man picked it back up. He wiped the corners of his mouth with the paper napkin Britos had stacked at every table, and met Detective Syed's gaze. Sir, I was just 14 at the time, and was visiting my uncle, and helped him in his gallery that sold souvenirs and other knickknacks. Detective Syed completed the statement, and catalog the antiques. It was off-season, and he had very few customers walking in. So, you used to stay till the shop closed in the evening? Yes. And what time would it close? All shops in Panaji close around 8 p.m. I thought you knew it, the youngster snorted. So, you closed at 8 p.m. every evening? Yes. No exceptions? Not any that I can recall. Well, on the 30th of April, 2016, it was open at least till 9:30 p.m. Afterwards, the CCTV blanked out. Oh, it was the last day of the month. Maybe it was open for stock taking, staying open late at night after a whole day of no business? Detective Syed cocked his left eyebrow. Detective, can I leave now? I'm not feeling too well, and I can't recall much. Daniel tried to slide out of his bamboo chair. The detective's eyes held steady. Daniel, I have not even started asking anything yet. And you know I'm going to get to it one way or the other. So, why don't you help me out here? I can be of no help to you, detective. I shouldn't even have come here. It was a mistake. Daniel got up and hobbled on the slippery sand. Detective Syed cleared his throat and said in a voice that rose above the waves that crashed outside, we went through the old CCTV footage. It shows someone coming out of the shop at 9:30 p.m. Daniel stopped in his tracks and turned. He walked back to the table and growled. You know, detective, I was a minor at the time and can't be charged with anything. True, but you could have been sent to a juvenile detention center. Could have been, but wasn't. Wait, for what? Daniel's face turned red. For whatever you didn't confess to, Detective Syed said in an even tone as he gestured for Daniel to sit down. We are not here to talk about it, though. We are here to discuss the footage we got from Tanishq Jewelry 3 days ago. Daniel's sported the same look as the fish kept on the ice at the entrance. So, Daniel, how about you sit down and I'll order you a bibinka? No, thanks. I'm full. What is it that you want to know? Daniel, on the night of 30th April 2016, between 9 to 10 p.m., robbers drilled a hole in the back wall of Swarna Jewelers and hauled the stuff worth INR 8 crore with them. As you already know, it's next to Pablo's gallery. You didn't hear anything? No. As my uncle said at the time, I was not there. Daniel rasped through a clenched jaw, which we know now is not true. How can you say that? I'm sure many own a hoodie of the same brand, but I'm sure they will not be wearing one on a humid April night. And who said anything about a hoodie? What hoodie? Daniel countered. Detective Syed let out a chuckle. He knew it was the best antidote for teenage bravado. Okay, the same one that the CCTV outside Tanishq captured 3 days ago. This one should be easier to remember. Daniel's face turned pale. What is the connection between the two? You tell me. The detective parlayed in a calm voice. Okay, I was helping my uncle at the store the night Swarna Jewelers was looted. But I swear, we didn't hear a thing. We had almost finished when a man in a dark blue hoodie turned up at the store asking for a lighter. He was wearing shades, and I found that suspicious. He didn't realize I was watching him as he took out his wallet and dropped a gun. My uncle at the register could not see it, but I did. The vase in my hand fell, and the next moment, the gun was pointed at me. Okay, what happened next? I can't remember what exactly happened. Daniel's eyes were like the floodgates about to be opened. Detective Syed leaned back on his tubby chair, rocked the back of his head in his knitted hands, and cajoled. Take a deep breath and try again. That bebinka is still on the offer? I think my uncle begged him to spare me. The man asked us to turn off the CCTV and stay in the shop, and left. Was that what happened? Yes. And you left the city the next day to return after 5 years? Yes. Only the new CCTV footage we found from Tanishq across the street tells a different story. Detective Syed leaned forward and drummed his fingers on the table. Which is, Daniel sniggered, the man in the hoodie never walked out of the gallery. Daniel's eyes went wide. But you said you saw him walk out. No, it was a 14-year-old who walked out wearing a dead man's hoodie. Daniel gulped air. Detective Syed half shut his eyes, scratched his chin, and continued, and walked back into Tanishq store 3 days ago. And quite possibly other places across Goa before that. I have a theory. He was tracked down by the fellow robbers of the dead man. They made him an offer he could not refuse. Be a part of their gang, or go to juvie for murder. Daniel's face went blank. He whispered in a trembling voice, nice theory. I came back as I got admission into a college in the city, which is a nice cover-up. Daniel, you don't have to tell me what happened at the gallery that night. And I think I know the reason why you wore the same hoodie. Which is? Supposing your theory is correct, you wanted to be rescued. Is that a possibility? Daniel's eyes begged, still too scared to be hopeful. Yes, if you can help nab the gang and finish eating bebinka, the disappearance of Elizabeth Conway. Elizabeth Conway, reported missing on the 18th of November, 1986. 5'5", slender build, brown hair, and green eyes. Last seen leaving school premises on the 13th of November at roughly 1600, wearing her school uniform. White shirt, navy blazer, tie, and tights. A double-breasted, brown overcoat with white buttons, and a black woolly hat. First missing persons report of the victim. No previous criminal record. No records of mental illnesses. No reports of family conflict. No records of conflict at school. So, no reason to run away, thought the inspector, as he meticulously read over her profile, line by line, taking a long drag of his cigarette in between. No suspects, no trails, and no trace of the missing girl. The only lead, a Nikon F3 SLR, with a large crack streaking across its lens. There was nothing special about the camera itself. In any ordinary case, one would suspect nothing of a broken camera under a shedding oak tree, hidden in a pile of leaves. They'd tut and shake their head at the thought of an inconsiderate litterer leaving a trail of rubbish without a speck of care for the environment. Even to the inspector, it would be meaningless litter, except it was found near the route Elizabeth would take to get home from school. Through the entrance nearest to the duck pond, to feed them the crusts from her sandwiches she refused to eat. Past the fields of goalposts where the local Sunday league teams would train. Through the heavily wooded area where the owls and squirrels nested before reaching the exit next that led to the local pub, where she would find her house on the end of the road. Yet even passing places that would often be swarming with people, witnesses, the girl seemed to have vanished without a trace. Perhaps it was his intuition and expertise that made him question the worth of the camera. Or perhaps it was his desperation to solve the case without a single suspect or lead that made him hold on to a false sense of hope. Whichever it was, he allowed himself the hint of a smile at the result of trusting his judgment as he swept his eye across the photos that hung across the dark room. The photos of the girl who had disappeared without a trace. The constable stood in disbelief at the first lead in the impossible case. Had it not been for the countless nights of sleep he lost in desperate search of a clue. And now he held on to the clue in his hands as he would his own child. It was heavy. It came with a neck strap, noticeable if she had dropped it. Clearly, it was discarded on purpose. What could the girl have seen that made her throw away such an exquisite bit of kit? He wondered. One by one, the two closely analyzed each scene from the roll of 400 films, searching for the pieces of the puzzle that was hidden within. Seems like we may have our first few suspects. The constable held the print under a blood crimson tint that dimmed across the dark room. He streaked his hands over the two girls, one who seemed tanned recently from the Mediterranean with bright blonde hair, throwing a frisbee to the other with silky black hair, who seemed to fix a jealous gaze towards a boy that lay next to Elizabeth on a picnic blanket. Her had grazing his wavy brown hair. The photo had been taken in the same park Elizabeth passed through on the way to school. The inspector's hunch was correct. There had to be a clue within the photos, as few as there may have been on the roll. These three seemed to appear in a lot of these photos, especially this lad here. Suspects, maybe. The inspector spoke with a tone of sarcasm. Or perhaps, constable, a concept you may not be familiar with. They are her friends? The constable growled in disapproval, unable to reply with a witty comeback, as he continued to shake his head at the photos. I don't know, Inspector. There's just something quite off about these photos. As if something isn't right in these pictures. Though he rolled his eyes at the constable's intuition, or rather, his lack of, he could not help but agree as he continued to analyze the other photos. Some like the one the inspector had pointed out, were of her in the park. The location they suspected of her last whereabouts. The photo at the end of the wash line caught his eye more than the others. The photo of the girl walking away into the wooded area. He could not explain the cold shiver that flooded his body. Perhaps it was the faded glow around her, casting an ominous shadow in the dark winter night. Perhaps it was the way she seemed to be descending into an abyss of darkness, never to be seen again, some by the school, seemingly at the start of the day, judging by the children heading towards the building, some by the front of her house, and a few in various random locations, such as cafes, restaurants, and cinemas. There seemed to be no pattern in the location, other than the fact Elizabeth didn't seem to travel very much, or very far, if these places she deemed worthy of photographing. Or perhaps, the inspector thought, there was a significance to these seemingly mundane locations. Either way, all these locations had previously been searched, revealing no trace of the girl. He noted the appearances of each new face he came across, analyzing body language between characters and secrets hidden behind each expression. He scanned each person in depth, as if he were questioning them in an interrogation. He knew, of course, that the basis of such assumptions would be no different to creating characters for a storybook. The balance of assumption and deduction was a fine line. Perhaps, he thought, there would be someone lurking within these photos, hidden away in the background, someone with a vengeful eye, waiting to kidnap poor unsuspecting Elizabeth. But he dared not suggest it to the constable, at least not yet. To suspect such a thing would escalate the case to a criminal investigation. From his experience, escalating a missing persons case turned out to have severe consequences for the person who was eventually found, dead or alive. He was somewhat relieved to find no such person lurking in the background. He took a step back and sharply exhaled a cloud of smoke in relief. He tilted his head and gathered his remarks, taking another drag of his cigarette. So far, only two things seemed to correlate with the photos. One being nothing more than a hunch. He could not quite place it, but there was something familiar about many of the views in the photos. Holding a photo in one hand and taking a hit of his cigarette in another. What was this sense of familiarity he felt? It was as if he had stood exactly where the photographer had. "It's strange," mumbled the constable. "Look at it in a certain way, and you could follow the girl's daily routine. Leave home, go to school, walk home through the park, hang out with friends. Seems like she goes through life in a hurry, judging by the blurriness of them all." The inspector grinned at the constable's remark. The quality of photography that went into the pictures was quite rushed and poorly taken. Aside from Elizabeth, the others in the pictures seemed distorted or blurry. Either the girl's skills were in dire need of improvement, or she was too consumed by her own vanity to focus on anything else in the photos, given that she was in every single photo. The latter was more likely, except she didn't seem to face the camera in any of the shots. His eyes fixed once again on the girl on her own, walking into the wooded area. "Tell me something," said the inspector, circling his head across the room. "What kind of photos would you take on your camera?" The constable raised an eyebrow, puzzled by the inspector's attempt at small talk. "Nice scenery, friends, family, pets, events, perhaps any special occasions I'd like to remember precisely. So my question is, out of a roll of 400 photos, given the cost of rolls and prints these days, why only take photos of yourself? And why such blurry ones?" The hum of electricity flowed through the dark room lights, as if the room, too, was anticipating the constable's answer. Could it be, he thought aloud, that the camera may not actually belong to Elizabeth? "I fear so, Constable. Now ask yourself this. The photos are blurry and poorly lit, possibly due to the zoom distorting the camera's focus, and due to the lack of flash used. So why are the photos so poorly captured? And why does everyone in the photos seem to be doing quite mundane activities?" The colors in the constable's face had suddenly bled dry as he deciphered the inspector's epiphany. "You mean to tell me you see it too now, don't you?" the inspected continued, masking the sense of dread he refused to succumb to. "It's not the people in the photos we're after, but the photographer himself." The inspector took the last drag of his cigarette, as if to signal the constable to brace himself for the impact of his next words. "A stalker." He closely narrowed his gaze at the photo at the end of the wash line, memorizing each of the minute details. "These are the photos taken by Elizabeth's stalker. It all adds up. They were taken from a distance, by someone who did not want to be noticed. Except..." The inspector's voice came to a ghostly whisper. "Except when he was..." His eyes shifted focus away from the missing girl and onto her shadow, as a look of terror took place of the once coy smile. As if he were watching it unfold on a theater screen, he pictured the girl stopping dead in her tracks as the accidental camera flash illuminated the bushes around her, which were once enveloped by the winter darkness. He pictured the girl gingerly turning her head towards, praying it was only a trick of the light, staring wide-eyed in horror at the silhouette next to the tree. He pictured the man livid at his mistake as he tossed the camera, the evidence, as his expression changed to the smolder of a predator in the wild who had been spotted by his prey. As he pounced forward to begin the desperate chase, the inspector pictured the horror in the girl's face living out the fear of every woman alone and vulnerable in the dark, fluidly sprinting away from the danger, lungs too strained to scream for help. He pictured the girl, pounding her legs on the path, desperate to gain distance, only to be tackled down onto the damp, frosty grass. He pictured her writhing and clawing out to escape the clutches of her attacker, only to be dragged into the pitch-black abyss of the winter evening. The constable darted towards the door, coming to a sudden halt by the inspector's sharp grasp. "Let go!" he demanded. "This is out of your jurisdiction now. This is now an abduction case." But the inspector only strengthened his grip on the constable, refusing to release him. "Do you even know who you are looking for? We have no suspects and no other leads. If you sound the alarm now, we may never get the girl back. That stalker would know we were after him, and who knows what he'd do to the girl. The longer we wait, the more likely we are to lose the girl. It's already been almost a week. If we wait any longer, as you said, who knows what this guy could do? We'll find him. We're so close. It's all in there," the inspector exclaimed, pointing to the photos. "The clues are all in there. I just know it. Somewhere in this puzzle of photos is our suspect." The constable barged the inspector to release himself from his grip. He flicked the light switch on as he began to storm out the door. His hand slammed the handle of the door as he came to a sudden stop. He held his breath and paused. He looked back at the photos hanging from the wash line. Slowly, he approached the image of the school hanging in the middle of the room. The inspector curiously watched the constable, who had his eyes transfixed on the photo he held. One by one, the constable took the photos off the wash lines and began to arrange them in order. The inspector was all but helpless to wonder what was running through the constable's mind. But he dared not utter a word as the constable ordered the photos row by row. The constable's mind raced with thoughts, frantically searching for the thing that would connect the pieces to solve this mystery. Searching for a connection that may not even exist. But he had to try, his hands shuffling, sliding and shifting through the mounts and mounts of images. Finally, the constable took a few steps back at the puzzle he had solved, each photo laid in what appeared to be an order of brightness. "They're taken through a specific route," he began. "Take a look at the lighting, the shadows, and the location." The inspector, at a loss from his amazement, traced his eyes along the wash line. He watched the girl emerge from her house at first light, then wander into the school as more daylight emerged. He watched her have lunch with her friends by the cafe near the schools and walk home in the rapidly dimming light of the winter evening. It was all there in the lighting, based on the path the photographer seems to have taken. I'd say the photos are taken in the same order as some sort of delivery route. The inspector could not help but crack a smile at the constable's genius breakthrough. It was all laid out perfectly. The route seemed to begin somewhere on Elizabeth's Road, where her house was, then to her school, taking other routes near the cafes and shopping center, finally ending at the park, where he'd presumably end his shift and watch the girl on her way home. The question is, who exactly would use a route like this? The inspector wondered. Solve the last piece of the puzzle, and we'll have our suspect. The milkman, perhaps? Unlikely, the constable answered. The milkman would be doing his route before anyone was up. A postman? Perhaps. But what would a postman be doing in a park? Surely someone would notice him hiding behind bushes and trees. An ice cream man could hide from his van. Never heard of anyone selling ice cream before school? Paperboy, again, what would he be doing in a park? The inspector dropped his head and clenched his fists in frustration. They were so close to finding their suspect. Both he and the inspector knew they had one chance at finding the suspect before the investigation became public and before the abductor knew the police were after him, before it would be too late for the girl. If it wasn't already, he lifted his arm to his mouth to take another drag of his cigarette. He growled in frustration as he realized he had already finished it. He needed another one badly. He needed to focus. He reached into his coat pocket and balanced the nib between his lips. The sweet cherry scent of the Marlboro had immediately begun to work its magic, even before lighting it. He took his lighter from his back pocket, but stopped dead as the flints sparked. His gaze focused on the photos once again. He knew there was something familiar about the views in the photos. He had stood exactly where the photographer had been standing. He had stood in front of the laundrette that stood opposite the cafe, stood by the bus stop near the school, and stood by the same tree in the park, all while taking the last few drags of his cigarettas before throwing the butt into the bin. "It's the bin man," he exclaimed. "Drives around the houses and schools, then goes to the park to pick up the litter." "Of course," exclaimed the constable. "No one would suspect him hiding behind trees and bushes. Anyone would think he was only raking leaves or picking up litter. Anyone would think he was only doing his job." The inspector and constable nodded in unison. Both ran for their coats, darting out the door. They had their suspect, but there was no telling what he could have done to the girl. Both raced to the car and blared the siren, knowing it may have been too late to save the girl from the clutches of her stalker. Praying the worst had not yet succumbed to her. Pretty, yet deadly. The warmth of it all was intoxicating. Her heartbeat went crazy as the blood was trickling down her face, onto her chin, and down onto the marble floor. Why did this feel so good? Why was this easier and easier? Addicting. The crowd cheering made her feel the world spinning around her, like that one time she tried drugs. Would this be just as hard to give up on like the drugs as well? The constant craving for that feeling, but not the aftermath. She wondered what the aftermath would feel like. But for now, there were still 4 more people she needed to worry about before she could think of tomorrow's reality. Standing over the corpse, Alex just now noticed the gruesomeness of what she did. This was a hate fight as well. All that mocking in the back rooms, all those invasive touches and stares that made her feel violated. Growling, she smacked her head with her foot, the crack of her bones making Alex almost gasp in pleasure. She was dead, and this was her punishment. Now her pretty white dress that Kira mocked her for was stained red with her blood. A strap was ripped, but she didn't care. The pretty girl won, turning towards the crowd. Her eyes were sparkling with adrenaline, euphoria taking over her as she smiled bright and bowed before skipping off the stage. This wasn't the contest she signed up for, but it was the contest she was going to win, no matter what. "Good job, sunshine," Damien muttered as she passed by him, smirking. "Thank you, kind sir. See you in the finals." With a wink, she passed him. She knew he was going to win the next fight, so that made the 2 of them. Going back to her changing room, people were already waiting for her, ready to clean her up, prep her hair, and change her dress. But the blood was going to stay untouched, just like any other small wounds. It was their medal to go in the next round. Alex wasn't used to any of this, especially this type of medals that showed their passing. Usually, it would be a pin or some tacky golden star. This was nothing she prepared herself for, and from the introduction, no one was specifically prepared for it. If they had the luck in their life to get in any physical altercation and win, that was a plus. It all started with some pretty faces, nice bodies, and preppy clothes. But this was so much more now that she was so deep into it, as she left herself in the hands of the people in the room to take off her clothes and take care of her. She couldn't help but wonder how she came this far, how she started to enjoy that gruesome stage that was now bathed in blood, the lights all over them, the masked crowd enjoying every second of it. 2 hours ago, there were 20 people. Now there were only 3. Her long red dress with a slit down from her thigh, down, low cut, both back and the front, was long gone. Alex loved that dress, and she loved how it showed off her curves and long legs. But now it was long destroyed. Glancing over to the side of the room, on a rack, there laid all her torn-up dresses that she wore since all started. Whoever won was going to have their battle clothes sold. A token of this contest. The money going towards the winner. The thought of people buying ripped up and bloodied clothes made her wonder why people would spend money on such things. But she soon realized why. All those dresses were now tied to a battle, to a crime, and success at staying alive, being the hunter, not the prey. A token from the battles, and a piece of the contest itself. They were still calling it a contest, not just a fight until death. If they wanted help in the last round, they needed to win the hearts of the crowd, voting each round on who would win, and then at the end of each fight, keeping scores. It was a system from 1 to 5. They revealed what would happen at the end. The one that got the highest rating would mean they are the public's favorite, which would bring its benefits. Not sure of what that meant, they knew it must be something good, so they needed to put on their best face even as they killed brutally. Some of them sadly forgot this was a contest in the end, and the votes counted, so Bruce ignored it. He thought only of the end goal, killing everyone in order to survive. The crowd wanted foreplay. They wanted dirty fights, but with fair chances. The girls never fought against the boys, not until the finale round. They wanted the thrill of a long, bloody fight, hearing them growl and cuss with each new wound, with each new bruise and cut, seeing them fight for their lives, seeing the growing desperation as one of them realized this could have been the end, and tough decisions were going to be taken. Bruce wasn't aware of it, and snapped the opponent's neck in a matter of seconds. He saw a weak point and took it, finishing it all without giving the crowd what they wanted. The silence after that was morbid. No reaction from anyone. Just Bruce in the middle of the scene, arms spread, wanting to challenge the world itself, feeling invulnerable. What he didn't know was that no one liked that, and they were ready to challenge him back. Red buttons lit all over the room. Alex could swear that she saw those red lights flicker inside the crowd's eyes, thirsting for the blood they didn't get. He got one from everyone. If just one person would have given him another score, he could have survived. But those were not the rules. Tied up, every participant still alive was meant to wound him, not fatal, but in an appealing way that would make the crowd tremble in pleasure. That, or they would join his faith. Whoever had the highest score in that round would get the best prop for the next round. Kira won it by being her slutty self, yet she still died. Looking at the dried blood under her nails, the image of her nails dragging down on Kira's face made her shiver. What did she become? From the first round lamb, she now became a cheetah. She was fast and agile, thanks to the years of gymnastic her mom forced her into taking when she was 6. It was now paying off. What would her mother think of seeing her like this? Knowing her little baby killed and killed and killed? Maybe she didn't have to know all was good. She was alive, and she could be hugged by her mother away. A long, nice bath, washing away all the blood, and together with it, her sins. She would go to church. She would wear her most modest white dress and braid her hair like her mother did ages ago when they would go there. "You are good to go, princess." The woman smiled gently towards her, just like a grandmother. Kind eyes and deep wrinkles next to her eyes when she would smile. She looked so out of this picture, and yet she was the one that cleaned the blood off and nurtured her wounds. If she could look at her with this kindness, even after knowing and seeing all she did, her mother will as well. She loved her, her little angel. "This is suiting." Alex exhaled as she stared at herself in the mirror. An angel. Another white dress, long and flowy. A pair of wings and a sparkling tiara. The blood wasn't even bothering her. It looked like a second skin now, a piece of her, something that she shall never be able to wash, always seeing it stain her in the mirror. The next thing she knew was that she was back on the stage, face to face with Damien, dressed as the devil itself, black shirt and burgundy vest, shiny shoes and black pants, tiny red horns on his head. He was beautiful, she had to admit to herself once again. And if this was a normal contest, she could imagine herself at the end of it, with him at her side, arm around her waist. Both winners, prizes in their hands. A pretty image. But there was going to be just one winner, and the prize would be their own lives, still being alive. "You look angelic." He laughed, his fingers gently tracing her face in the eyes of the crowd. Smiling, she placed her hand over his, keeping it on her cheek. So warm and gentle, making her insides wrestle inside of her. The thrill she felt as she won. But those long fingers were going to soon strangle her, digging deep into her, wanting her dead. "You look devilish yourself." She smiled as she placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. So close. She didn't want this. She wanted to be done with this bloodshed. But it was her or him. Getting close to him, their lips gently touching. She gasped as he kissed her back, his hand on her neck, pulling her closer. This was what the crowd wanted, right? A show. To see them suffer. For them to feel their pain while they weren't losing anything. A love story would make this so much better. a cliché. But it was a cliché because people enjoyed it, always watching it. Kissing harder, she moved her hand towards her wings, detaching one, grabbing tight. Before she left the dressing room, the show master brought her another pair of wings, congratulating her on her scores and her new prop. One glance towards the old lady, and she realized what it meant. She saw her assemble the wings, so now she did the opposite, cutting her hand on the blade, grabbing tight on it, and lifting her hand, she stabbed the wing deeply in the back of Damien, just as he used one of his horns, stabbing her in the back as well. Both collapsing on their knees. Neither of them stopped the kiss, becoming just more intense as the crowd gasped. It was just a matter of time of who would bleed faster, who would turn cold. They were going to die in their own way, and they were going to wait. Murderer's delight, murderer's delight. Mistress Gale, as she was known, has developed a certain lifestyle that required her to invent methods to maintain it. The woman understood the importance of keeping a job, as she was taught by her elders, because she engaged in activities that she could not afford by legal means. Mistress Gale exploited other people to supplement her lifestyle. She would steal from the elderly people whose homes she worked at as a caregiver. When tragedy struck her family, she learned to offer her family members a place to live in her home in order to exploit them for their money. When her niece was misbehaving and her sister was not a good mother, Mistress Gale housed her in her home. The young girl's father paid the exploiter to let his daughter live with the mistress of darkness. Exploitation was something that she became an expert at due to her troubled childhood. As a young girl who was sexually abused by her father, Barbara learned early that she could get paid to keep her mouth shut. Since the adults in her life didn't believe the account that she gave the first time that her uncle exposed himself to her, she often would take the money that he offered her to keep quiet. The violence and sexual exploitations that was experienced by Gale forever changed her soul. She became angry, violent, and grew up with a darkness in her that no amount of light could change. When her parents would have alcohol in the home, Gale and her siblings would consume it as an escape from the trauma of living in an abusive home. By the time that she was 18, the antagonist had become an alcoholic. In November of 1980, the death of Lillian Adler, Gale's mother, contributed to her already damaged psyche. Her other siblings had also been abused by the patriarch of the Adler family. But Gale fooled herself into believing that she was the only one. Although one of her younger sisters had begged her not to leave her, and the youngest one alone with their father, 23-year-old could not feel any empathy for them. Even at the young age of 23, she already had lost her sense of compassion or mercy for others. Mistress Gale had become her abuser. She developed a God complex and told herself that the world owed her everything. This complex caused her to hate anyone who told her no. The downward spiral into madness made her become spiteful. Abuse and trauma, untreated, causes an individual to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. When a situation that is beyond the individual's control, the person feels a need to control others and whatever situation he or she is in at the moment. Mistress Gale loved to be in the company of violent men because she had developed a soul tie to them. Whenever other females came around, she would see them as a threat. She didn't have too many female friends. Loved to control other women, even in their own homes. On a cold winter's night, Mistress Gale found herself at the home of one of her male friends. The other people that were there were men only, and they were all drinking. Gale thought that she could trust her friend Eugene, but soon found out that was not the case. The men ended up gang raping her, and they paid Eugene to allow it to happen to Mistress Gale. This traumatic event was the final straw for her, and she soon became a psychopath. Mistress Gale had a brother who was what one could describe as a wimpy man. He was easy to influence and never wanted to be in control of his own life. Since they were raised in a dysfunctional home, Henry never developed a sense of self-worth. He wasn't taught how to be an independent man standing on his own feet. Henry learned to depend on his sister and the females in his family. They allowed him to live in their homes, cooked for him, paid his bills, and shopped for him whenever he needed clothing. This codependency was an opportunity to be exploited by Mistress Gale, his now psychopathic sister. January of 1991 came around, and Henry needed new clothes. He gave his sister money to purchase him a new wardrobe, wanting to keep some of the money for herself to maintain her alcohol addiction. Mistress Gale returned home with no receipt, verifying how much money she had actually spent on her brother's clothing. The only time that Henry would stand up for himself was when he was full of liquid courage. When the two siblings became engaged in an argument about the brother's change, it led to the sister going to the hospital via ambulance. While they were arguing, Mistress Gale didn't see the huge, empty bottle of liquor that her brother hit her with. Head injuries causes a change of an individual's personality. With all of the previous drama in her life, there was no way that the main character of this story could be a decent person again. She spent the rest of her life causing trouble and mayhem to anyone in her life. Although her brother was remorseful for what he had done to her, Gale used the injury that she sustained as a way to gain even more control of her brother. When others would attempt to hold her accountable For her actions, he would defend her. She continued to exploit any situation that she could, and when opportunity presented itself, she figured that she could kill two birds with one stone. The father of the family retired after so many years of working as a farmer. He moved into a retirement building. Harry Adler was a man who couldn't control his own fleshly desires. Not only did he molest his own daughters, drink, and use drugs, he had a gambling monkey on his back. This lifestyle started to take effect on his health. He found himself with little mobility, kidney trouble, and high blood pressure. Deteriorating health didn't stop him from frequenting the gambling casinos of Louisiana. He learned how to utilize the bus system where he lived to get around. While he was engaging in his gambling escapes, Harry also loved to dine on the buffets that the casinos offered to their patrons. The aging father of 7 ate something that didn't agree with the other toxins that were already in his body. He became ill and was rushed to the hospital in Texas. Although he had signed a "do not resuscitate" document in the event that he became ill, his troubled daughter saw this as an opportunity to get even with him and get money from his life insurance policy, enlisting the aid of her partner in crime. Gail developed a scheme to murder her father. When the doctors called the family into the hospital to inform them that it was not a high probability that their father would live, they made the decision to take him off of life support. As the family members went in to see their father for the last time, Leonard, his illegitimate son with his oldest daughter, came out of his room, claiming that something went wrong with his father while he was in the room with him. This turned out to be a lie, because he and Mistress Gail had decided to end his life in the event that he didn't die on his own. This attempt to get money was a waste of time, because he had left his daughter, Carmen, as beneficiary on his life insurance policy. The policy included just enough finances to give him a proper funeral and burial. Unable to prove that her father was murdered, Carmen started seeking God's justice for her father's murder. In 2016, Leonard started losing the use of his eyes and is slowly becoming blind. Mistress Gail has fallen down several times, down a flight of stairs, and is suffering with pain in her body every day. She is living in an environment with her daughter that she can't manipulate and has to submit to her rules. Accusation. Pounding the tarmac, she bolted down the garden path like an Olympic champion at the start gun. She quickened her pace to an all-out sprint, whilst the springing, graceful steps of 20 miles earlier had long since disappeared. The slapping noise of her flip-flops resonated around the vandalized walls of the housing estate with a clanging echo. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know where she was heading, but she knew she had to get far away from him. Flashing in her eyes, an image of a wedding dress consumed her thoughts. She wanted to tear it and rip it up and throw it at him. Throw it at the man that she could never marry. For God's sake, I'm only 16. I can't get married, she thought. Tears blinded her, and she turned, running as quickly as her long legs could carry her. She bolted down the alley. The pounding noise of her flip-flops reverberated off the walls of the alley, along with a clanging echo that matched her heart, throbbing inside her chest, filling up with acid. Her legs couldn't go on anymore. There she saw it, a barn. It blossomed on the hill amid the grass and the meadow flowers, as if one day it sprung up from some precious seed. I have to go in there, just for a little while, and I will go back home soon, she thought. Opening the door, the smell hit her first as she lugged open the unwieldy, russet-painted door adorned with its tired hinges that creaked like the moaning of cantankerous old men collapsing down. Her legs couldn't carry her anymore. They were filled with toxins, lost in the rhythmic percussions of her steady breathing. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in college and getting a degree. However, that dream seemed so unrealistic, invading her steady breaths. A sound of murmuring pervaded the ambiance, and it was coming from outside. Lifting herself up, she carried herself forward and looked out of the cracks in the door. In the middle, a man was begging on his knees. She saw that his face was bearing with the congealed blood, and his clothes were in an utter mess. However, they showed him no mercy. Surrounding him, a tall man was clutching onto his shirt and ripping it apart. In front of him, a much slender man gave him a red eye. His left eye was swollen. He couldn't be seeing a thing out of that, and his face was more purple than brown. She couldn't look. Her eyes widened, and lip trembled. Plummeting onto the floor, the man laid there. He was dead. Calling out from a distance, she could hear a voice telling them to bury him there. Nevertheless, she couldn't see who it was and couldn't seem to recognize this voice. Just like minions, all the men dug holes with shovels and buried the man, leaving no evidence behind. Tears burst forth like water from a dam spilling across her face. The muscle of her chin trembled like a small child. Salty drops fell from her chin, drenching her kurti. Many thoughts pervaded into her mind. She had never seen these people before, even though she lived in a small village in Pakistan. Going towards the way she came, she ran back home. I can't be here anymore, she thought. Howling wildly, the rain lashes the concrete breeze that made her lose control. She ran through a maze of buildings and winding side streets as the sky rumbled, and heavy rain bounced off the cobblestones. A storm smothered the sun, graying the world around her, drops of rain beat against her skin like hammers. Reaching home, she ran up to her apartment and banged on the door. Getting inside, she ran to her room and closed the door. Overpowering all her emotions, the face of the dead man haunted her, playing the story over and over again. She fell asleep and let her thoughts turn all her dreams into nightmares. Waking up in the morning, she turned on the news and waited. There is a kind of waiting that feels like gentle, onshore breezes kissing salty stones. Nevertheless, this is not what she was feeling today. The news finished, and there was nothing about this missing man. How strange, she thought. Months go on, and there is no sign of this man. Befuddlement infiltrated into her mind. Who was this man? And most importantly, why was he dead? After months of waiting, she saw it. Sitting there on the sofa, she saw it on the news. It was exactly the same man that got killed, and apparently he was missing. So they didn't know that he's dead, she thought. Her mouth pursed and slightly loosed. She looked up at the TV, her eyes fixed, as if this was the only thing that mattered in this world. She had to go, running forward. She had to stop. She wheezes as her burning lungs gasp for air. Her legs feel numb and unsteady, painfully sore. Her throat felt dry, so uncomfortably dry. Clothes' long, blonde-brown hair were clinging onto the tarmac. No different than if she runs through a rainstorm. Unable to go on, she stopped running, gasping for air. But she knew she had to go on. At the corner of the road, there lay walls as thick as the medieval castle, and windows almost as mean. There's no flicker of light within, and the thick wooden doors were closed. Going into the police station, she felt a soft panic growing inside of her. The steps she took were just increasing this amount. It will fade if I back away, but then I have to do this all again another time. It will grow if I let these thoughts swirl into a vortex of stupidity, eating their own tail. Or I can breathe real slow. Let the thoughts leak into the ether and be the real boss of myself, she thought. Approaching the officer, she sat down and told him about what she had seen that night. She told him about the beating and about them burying the dead man. Walking past him, a tall man looked at her, and suddenly she remembered him. It was the same man that clung to his shirt that night. Getting up off her seat, she pointed at the tall man. Sweat trickled down her face and etched marks onto her skin. But she had to do this. Miss, I think you are getting a bit hysterical here. This man works with us, and he would never do such a thing, said the officer. Whist. He examined her up and down. He couldn't understand her. She looked like she was telling the truth. But Hassan couldn't have done this. I do trust him, thought the officer, and he was part of the Commander League, and is soon to get promoted into officer. Telling her to wait in the courtroom, he dismisses her so that he could talk to other members of the department. Just stepping into the courtroom is making her breathing rapid and shallow. She can feel her pulse pounding in her temples. It's a relief to get to the chair. Otherwise, I would have tripped, she thought. Now, only silence lingers in the air. She shivers in the claustrophobic common room and waits for the signal. But a small sigh of anxiety leaps out of her mouth. Tersely, her eyes flicker to the building's whist. She bit her nails to the core, beckoning her to come in. The same officer takes her back into the office. However, they go further in, and it's like nowhere she has actually ever seen before. The fear sits on her like a pillow over her mouth and nose. Doubting her decisions, she tells herself that she had made the right decision. Once again, fear found her. It spoke to her in its cackling voice. It told her legs to go weak, her stomach to lurch, and her heart to ache, as that is what happened to her. She knew she had to keep going, because the truth was just seconds away. Stepping into an exquisite office, she could see the posters hanging and the files stacked up neatly. Getting introduced to the other officers, she sat down, and in the process, she saw the slender man and recognized him immediately, because he was the one who punched the dead man, and instantaneously, she got off her seat. This is the man who punched the dead man. Laughing hysterically, all the officers got up off their seats and surrounded her, just like they did with the dead man. The officer who she met first started talking. "I believe that it is you who killed him," said the officer. "Isn't that right, Commander Abad?" "Yes," replied the commander. The voice sounded so familiar in her head, but why she thought. Then it clicked in. He was voice who told them to bury the dead man. Feeling an overwhelming feeling of disgust, she stood up and went towards the commander. "You did all of this," she snarled. "No, I didn't. Officers, can you please put her behind bars? And that is an order," replied the commander. Locking up her hands, the officers grabbed into her shoulders and took her away. Trying to justify her case, she had no luck. The constricted feeling grew inside of her, as if she was strangled by just the air about her. She glances upward to the surface, and her heart rate rises. The voice of caution whispers softly, not to rise so fast. But it can't break through the screen for unfiltered rays and fresh air. From the moment she saw it, it repulsed her. These walls cannot hold a prayer, nor can hold a spirit. And I belong here, she thought. Surrounded by 4 white walls, there was nothing else to do but stare at them, to look at the paint that had started to chip off as time passed, or gouged by other prisoners. anything to pass time, slowly going mad, theorizing absurd meanings from the wall's blank stare. And this is what I would be doing here, she thought, getting thrown into prison. She screamed and shouted like there was no tomorrow, and flung her arms across the cell. I can't stay here, she thought, and not for something I didn't even do. I did not kill the man. It wasn't me, she shouted. But no one heard her. No one ever did. Banana robbers! They were laughing as they took the last of the money from the friendly banana bank. They knew that after this day, that they would be the richest bananas of the banana world. They had to make a quick escape, though. The alarms were ringing in their ears. The banana cops were on their way. They could just hear the cops as they ran. Be Banana and Go Banana made a great team. They were the best bananas at robbing. They knew that after they robbed, they would have to split the money and have to pretend that they were innocent. They were also great actors. They knew to be part of the banana stampede after they robbed, so they could pretend like they were there the whole time. The banana stampede took place every day at the banana park. It was the best place to hide after doing something wrong. Everyone at the banana stampede knew how it felt to do something wrong. They were all banana criminals at one point. They all got the wrath of the sacred rule breaking punishment. They all stopped committing crimes after that. Once they reached the banana stampede, they were very hangry, so they killed a fellow banana and ate him. They hid the remains of the fellow banana. They knew that if they got caught, then they would be in huge trouble. They heard the banana cops coming. The cops started asking around if they saw anyone who came from the direction of the friendly banana bank. One of the bananas started crying. She told everyone that Be Banana and Go Banana killed her husband. The cops took them to Banana Court. They finally started court after a long lecture about how you drive banana cars, which was way off topic. They had the whole banana stampede there that was not causing a stampede currently. They had a bunch of chairs in random groups. The judge was sitting down in a giant chair with bananas all over it. He also had a small desk with a banana volunteer to be the hammer. Welcome to the all-wonderful court, where we find out if you are guilty or not. Da Banana Judge told everyone, "Everyone take your seats and be quiet unless I tell you to speak. Today, we have two problems. The friendly banana bank has been robbed with not a single trace of money left. There was also a murder at the banana stampede that was caught by Mrs. Banana, witnessed. Mrs. Banana, will you tell us what you saw?" Of course, I was talking to him, and all of the sudden, I saw a knife through him. I looked behind him, and I saw Be Banana and Go Banana with the knife. Then they ate every single little piece of him. It was like a nightmare, Mrs. Banana declared. Be banana and go banana. You two have earned 10 seconds in jail so far, Da Banana Judge said. Mr. Peel, you said you saw who stole the money from the Friendly Banana Bank. Will you tell us what you saw? Yes, I was walking my banog, and I saw Be Banana and Go Banana walk into the bank. I stalled so I could see what they were doing. After a while, they came out with stacks and stacks of money. I ran as fast as I could to the nearest cop. I told them what I saw. That day, I also saw them steal all my banog bones. I was so mad. I wanted to tell the cops, but I thought that it wasn't as important as other things. Mr. Peel said, Thank you, Be Banana and Go Banana. Will you tell us your side of the story to see if you get 15 seconds in the corner or not? Da Banana Judge said. Yes, the wonderful judge. We were at the banana restaurant, and then when we were done, we saw Mr. Peel steal the money. We saw him run to his house and then tell the cops lies. When we went down to the banana stampede and saw Mrs. Banana murder her own husband, Go Banana said. By this point, the room was filled with murmurs. Everyone was standing, and they were scared to know who was the actual imposter. The volunteer banana hit his loudly and hard on purposely. The room filled with silence. Thank you. I cannot tell who is guilty or not, so you four get to go to jail for 20 seconds. Da Banana Judge said, Be bananas, go bananas, Mrs. Bananas, and Mr. Peel's faces were filled with shock. The banana cops pushed them into a jail. 20 seconds later, they were free to go out. Be Banana and Go Banana knew that that was an awful punishment and that they would never commit a crime again. But one thing bothered them. They wanted to know the punishments. They knew that they shouldn't commit another crime to do it, but catch someone committing a crime. One day, they reported someone stealing someone's jewelry. It was Mr. Chop, who was a retired server. Once they got to court, there was another lecture about how it is so easy to turn sides, and another lecture after that about what kind of bananas make videos. Finally, court started, and they found out that Mr. Chop was actually just helping a friend return jewelry. No one was put in jail, but on the way out, while DA Judge was having a conversation with other people, Be Banana and Go Banana stole the sacred rule book. They almost got caught, and they decided to take a drive. They didn't take just any drive. They took the longest drive ever in the banana history. The drive took 12 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. The next day, they went on the second longest drive in the banana history. They drove through mountains and valleys And finally, on to the banana interstate. Murder. Everything happened in a flash. I was just about to go to sleep when I heard the telephone ring. I used a rotary dial phone, which meant that I won't know who's calling me. I walked over to the phone and held it up to my ear. "Hello?" I answered. "Hello. This is the Glasscam Police Department. I am the sheriff of this town. You have been convicted of the murder of a person named Paul Smith, who was killed this night. I have sent a few officers to escort you to the department," the sheriff replied. Excuse me, but I haven't done anything wrong," I replied, stammering. "I was in my home during the evening." "Yeah, right. Tell that to the judge, kid," he said in a sarcastic tone. A knock on the door was heard a few moments later. As I opened the door, a swarm of officers piled into the room, some with guns facing at me. One of them, who I assumed was the chief of police, got a pair of handcuffs and tied them around my wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," said the chief. I tried telling him that I was innocent, but he said the same words that the sheriff said. What a coincidence, I thought to myself, as I was being taken to the back seat of the police car. I don't remember much after that. While I was in the car, I kept arguing that I was innocent, but the officers ignored me. My height and weight were taken after I got to the station, and I was placed in a small cell. It wasn't cozy at all. Just the life essentials were there. A bed, sink, and toilet. I was too weak and tired to stand, so I started to lie on the bed, starting to drift into my sleep. I woke up to the sound of an officer opening my cell. I got up and was put in handcuffs again. He told me I was going to a trial. I had no lawyer, so they just gave me one. From the looks of the lawyer's crinkled and dirty tie, his wild hair, and slightly broken glasses, I could tell I was going to lose in this trial. A few minutes later, a car came, and I was taken into the back seat. What felt like hours later, I was in front of the judge, who would decide my fate. Looking at the spectators, I saw a group of people in tears. I assumed they were the victims' parents. They saw me looking in their direction. They scowled at me and turned their heads in disgust. I couldn't take it. For all my life, I have never made any mistakes, so it would be unreasonable if I was accused of murder. Thinking about this made my head spin. After my testimony and the lawyer's argument with the victim's family's lawyer, it was time for the jury to decide. A few minutes later, the judge said the final statement of the trial. I only remembered a little bit. The accused, James Johnson, proven guilty, with no chance of parole, no chance of bail, can only be released until further evidence is discovered. This mumbo-jumbo is gonna take forever. Let's get to the point. James Johnson will serve a life sentence. Then the gavel was heard. Snug fit? The officers joked when I finished switching my shirt and pants to the ugly, bright orange prison uniforms. Cell number 13 was where I was headed, just when I thought I had the chance to be released. The number 13 blocks the tunnel of hope, I thought to myself in a saddened tone. I wanted to prove everyone wrong, especially my friends, family, and the victim's family. But now, that chance was disappearing every second I was in this building. My family came to visit every so often. Mother and my 23-year-old brother came to visit me every day. Father died when I was 12, a few years after my brother was born. Mother always told me that I was going to be proven innocent. Greg, my brother, told me that he will find evidence to get me out. I chuckled. Everyone knows that Greg hated using his brain for education purposes, but this time he had some hope in his eyes, which I never noticed before. Being beaten up by other prisoners took some time being used to. The food there was the worst. I couldn't be somewhere without at least one person watching me. But most of the time, it was the prisoners looking for a fight. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. That day, when my family visited, I asked them that I didn't like staying here anymore. Just a little while longer, Mother said with hope. I stared at my brother, wondering what Mother said. Question: good news or bad news? Greg asked. Why? I replied. Just answer the question, he said in an impatient tone. Okay. Calm down, I said. Bad news. I found a lead that might prove you innocent, but I hit a dead end, he said in a sad voice, while lowering his head in shame. But the good news is I broke through the dead end and found some evidence, he exclaimed, his head now up again. I was in shock. Without controlling it, I smiled. It was so goofy that Mother started to laugh, but in a hushed voice. My brother tried holding his laugh in, but he couldn't stop the burst that almost made him fall off his chair. Your court trial will begin tomorrow, he said. For the rest of the day, the thought of leaving this place made my heart feel warm. The day passed by without me even knowing it. Before sleeping, the thought struck me. What if the evidence doesn't work? Or the evidence proves me guilty again? I thought, before drifting to sleep. The next morning, I got up in a hopeful mood. The trial begins in about an hour. I quickly got ready and was taken into the court. I saw Mother, Greg, and the victim's family there. The victim's family was in a sour mood. I guess they were angry because, in their point of view, the murderer of their son was going to testify again, saying that he was innocent after being proven guilty. When Greg's evidence was in the spotlight, I thought that this might actually work. It showed that I was in my house the whole time during the murder. It showed what I did on that device during that time, which was mostly binge-watching a series. After the evidence was shown, the jury made their decision and passed it to the judge. The judge read it out loud. The accused, James Johnson, had previously been proven guilty, had no chance of parole, no chance of bail, and could only be released until further evidence is discovered. But now the evidence has been found. The jury and I have reviewed it. The conclusion was made. The decision is, exclaimed the judge in a very dramatic and suspenseful moment. James Johnson is innocent. I was happier than ever, but didn't make any goofy grins this time. The victim's family nodded in sorrow and regret for making those rude faces at me. I was taken home, where familiar noises from the house and street filled me up with adrenaline. I walked out of the house and sat on the porch when I saw my family driving their car into the driveway. They hugged me and sat on the porch. We laughed and talked together as if nothing had happened. While enjoying ourselves, I started to ponder, what will I do next? Murder warning. This is quite long. On Google Docs, it was 8 pages and 1,617 words long. I hope you like it though. Eleanor Gray knew who the suspect was. She was one of the best detectives in Europe and never got a case wrong. But this one was different. Different because it was harder than her previous ones. Harder because all the suspects she had chosen could be guilty or innocent. It could be Riley or Olivia, but she knew it definitely wasn't Emma. Emma was too sweet. But Eleanor had chosen Emma as one of her suspects because she was there for the entire murder. She heard the helpless screams. She saw the scarlet blood. She saw the silver knife gleaming under the moon, dripped in blood. And she didn't do anything the entire time. Miss Gray. And for a while, Eleanor forgot she was at court. Miss Gray, may I not need you to forget that you are at court at this moment. You may daydream all you like when you leave, but for the moment, you shall pay full attention to me and the conversation. Judge Chester explained. I apologize, ma'am. I shall pay attention now, Eleanor said kindly. Judge Chester was very strict, but she was Miss Gray's favorite judge. She knew how to get the job done, and she never underestimated Eleanor, most likely because she was Judge Chester's once-removed cousin. Now, the judge said, let's get back to work. Miss Gray, would you like to tell us who you think the suspect is? Or would you like your last 3 suspects to explain what they were doing? I would like my suspects to explain first, please. Suspect number 1, Olivia Bailey. Explain what you were doing at the time of the murder, Judge Chester shouted over the microphone. My name is Olivia Bailey. A red-headed girl stood up with mint green eyes and a brown tan. She was wearing a long yellow flower dress with a jean jacket over it. And I did not murder Miss Amelia Bailey because she is my sister. Anybody who tries to kill her sister is a maniac. And may I inform you, kindly, that I cared for my sister deeply. I may not have shown her much affection like most siblings do. But now that she is dead, I regret it. I should have shown her more love. I was offended at the fact that you chose me as a suspect. Miss Gray, explain why you have chosen Mrs. Bailey as a suspect. Eleanor started explaining. I have chosen Olivia Bailey as one of my suspects for many reasons. One, she may be Miss Amelia's sister, but sometimes the suspect is the one that is the least thought of. When the Bailey sisters were growing up, they fought a lot, and most of the time, Amelia won. This murder may have been Olivia's revenge. Two, Mrs. Olivia has been absent often and found mostly at weapon shops. The knife used was a knife Olivia once bought. She may have bought it to kill her sister. At this, Olivia looked horrified. She looked as if she was about to scream and cry. But thankfully, she kept her mouth shut. So Eleanor went on, but the knife may as well have been found by the murderer when they broke in. 3. I was hoping not to say this, but it seems as though I have to. Mrs. Olivia has been found practicing murdering techniques on a dummy in one of her friend's basements. She has been practicing throwing and penetrating the heart from a small in the back. Miss Amelia's body was found with a puncture in that same spot. That is my evidence that Mrs. Olivia might be the murderer. Eleanor finished. She stared at Olivia, who was starting back at her. She looked as if she wanted to say something. And the great thing about Judge Chester was that she knew that look. Mrs. Olivia Bailey, would you like to add something? Yes, please, she said. I would like to say that the information Miss Gray has given is false. 1. Yes, when we were children, we would fight, but we would play fight. Those times when I won was the times that my sister would let me, because we all knew that she was the better fighter in the family. I only fought her on occasion so that she could find new tricks. The judge looked quite fed up here. Mrs. Bailey, I understand where you are coming from, but we do not have the time for you to explain yourself. You may moan all you like, but for the time being, I have to trust the detective, Miss Gray. Now then, Miss Riley, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. A tall girl with black hair and brown eyes stood up. She was wearing one of the shortest dresses Eleanor had ever seen. I didn't even know there was a murder until you told me before yesterday on the phone, she said, poised and calm. Too poised and calm, which wasn't natural for a suspect. unless they were the murderer, or she was just a calm person in general. But Eleanor and Riley had gone to the same school, and if Riley lacked something, it was calmness, patience, and calmness. "It's not natural," Eleanor said, "for somebody to be so calm when they are being interrogated." She was standing now and walking towards Riley, her blonde hair flowing in the air, her black hat covered over her hazel eyes, her jeans reaching her ankles where her black boots reached, her black leather jacket over a red shirt. One would think that a suspect would be fighting to stay out of prison, wouldn't they? A criminal would seem calm, to cover up their fear. "Wouldn't you say so?" Miss Gray asked, slamming her hands on Riley's desk, leaning over to stare into her eyes, to see the truth. "I disagree, Miss Gray," Riley responded. "An innocent person would not fight, because they would know that they do not need to serve time in prison. May I ask, Miss Riley, how many times you have been a detective trying to solve a crime?" "None. But if I must say so myself, I do watch a lot of court on television. And when we try to figure out who the criminal is, we are correct most of the time. And is court your favorite thing to watch?" "Yes." And at that, Miss Gray walked away and sat down, crossed legs on her desk, and hat tipped over her eyes, but keeping an eye on all three suspects. "Now, Emma Williams, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder." "I was working at my restaurant, ma'am," Emma said. She was the only one who wasn't wearing a dress. Instead, she wore a white top and gray leggings. Her brown hair covered her eyes, but Eleanor could still make out that they were the color of a storm at sea. A wild and free storm, but shy, just like Emma's character. "And what exactly do you do at your restaurant?" Miss Gray asked. "I am a waitress. I take orders of food and drinks. I am quite familiar with what a waitress is, but what I do not understand is how you know Miss Amelia Bailey. From all the records we have seen, we have not heard anything that mentions Miss Bailey. So tell me, Miss Williams, how do you know Amelia?" After a moment's hesitation, Emma said thoughtfully, "Our parents were close friends when they were younger. I grew alongside the Bailey sisters, but we kept it a secret." "That is all the information we need from you, Emma," Eleanor said in a flat tone. After thinking thoughtfully, "I have decided on who the criminal is." Judge Chester stared at Eleanor, though was not surprised. "I have decided," Miss Gray went on, "that the criminal is nobody." Everyone in the room was shocked. There were soft murmurs. Eleanor could only make out a few. "What does she mean by nobody? Surely she has made a mistake." "Silence," the judge shouted. "Miss Gray, I do not understand. There has been proof of Miss Amelia Bailey's death. How is there nobody who killed her?" "Let me explain." Eleanor started. I am correct that only I saw the dead body, yes? Well, there was a puncture in her skin, in the same small of her back, as Miss Olivia was training. However, the sisters were only play fighting, like they did when they were little. They had agreed that they are allowed to use sharp weapons, and the reason Olivia was found training was for that match. Amelia was using their training room, and when the match started, Miss Amelia couldn't find her armor, so she thought she would be fine. Sadly, she died from blood loss. Yes, there was a puncture in her back, but it was very small, and somehow, overnight, she had died from blood loss. Miss Riley, you and Amelia were good friends when little, and you both loved watching court. I know from the information you gave me, you kept saying we instead of I or me. You meant Amelia as the other person, and Emma Williams. Or should I say Emma Bailey? Emma Amelia Bailey. Amelia had a twin sister, an unknown twin sister that Mr. and Mrs. Williams agreed on raising. I believe Amelia Bailey's full name is Amelia Emma Bailey. Yes, it is. So that concludes it. Nobody is guilty. Amelia Emma Bailey's death was unintentional, and she was finished. Another case closed, and she walked out of the hall to her apartment across the street. What would you like, sir? Sir, we need you. Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened. A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pie A Trust Bakery. Pray, tell his name. Robert Jr., business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. You are right, sir. I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Maddock, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a goldmine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom. I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain your integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs. Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, you could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s, with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. "What's your name?" "Rebecca Taylor." "For how long you are working here?" "Since the past few weeks." "Can you describe what happened this morning?" "Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days, but this time he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart, and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation, so I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle, and in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. "What's your name?" "Vade Danish." "So, Vade, Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth." "No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them." "Okay, so for how long are you working here?" 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. "Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca?" "No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected." "What will you like, sir?" she asks in a humble tone. "Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else." She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. "Sir, are you okay?" I see Rebecca beside my table. "Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about." She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. "It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves." I thank her and dig in my spoon, because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. "Doctor, did Robert had a migraine?" Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact. But his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who is currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The Justice of Sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. Who is there? I shout, switching off the television. Sir, it's me, Daniel. I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. So, Daniel, what brings you here? The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details. He was a drug dealer in South Carolina. and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money, I said. Listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor. But after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo. I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. What happened? Daniel asked. She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died. For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, "Where is Rebecca?" Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. "Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you." I take the note and read, "Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca." Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with Ren's auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears. Life and death. It took him 10 seconds to die. There's a lot he could have thought of in those 10 seconds. Likely among them was how he didn't want to die. There's a fear of the unknown in the heart of every human. An awareness that one day the end will come, that you won't have any control over it. Cultures around the world have stories of what will happen in death. Will you arrive at the pearly gates? Do you need payment for the ferryman to bring you to the afterlife? Or will you find yourself born again and again until you achieve enlightenment, regardless of what he believed in life? In the final moments, did it bring him comfort? Did it bring him peace? Or did he think of the past? Living by the lake, first fearing its depth as a tadpole before emerging as a conqueror. Reliving the carefree moments of youth, of the rocks and sand between toes, and the sap from climbing trees. Growing up with first 2 parents, then only one. Knowing the sorrow that it can bring to one so young. Long nights at the bonfire, first with families, then with friends. The first look, the fire-glow skin, and the reflective eyes. With her came quick smiles, soft hands, and first times. The boy becoming a man as nights lengthened and the sky darkened. She left with the autumn breeze, and he left that lake too. He woke early and trained and marched. He climbed 4-meter walls, crossed ditches, spent hours at the firing range, and completed field exercises in combat gear. Discipline and mental fortitude brought on new meaning. And then they weren't exercises anymore. He would not have lingered on his military tours, but he would have seen faces of his comrades, dead and alive. With those that couldn't be saved, there'd be the guilt, the sadness, the regret. With those who survived, he'd always have a bond. His superiors who directed troops across the land. Civilians he had helped, who he hoped were doing as well as they could in a war-ravaged country. Together, they had molded him into a man with iron will and direction, rough around the edges, with kindness deep within his heart. It was a life that he'd relived in nightmares. When he left the military, he came back to the lake. Its calmness was a balm for his soul. Watching over it and the people who surrounded it calmed his mind and steadied his heart. His work was now to protect and serve the people, to wear a different uniform. He was wearing that uniform as he died. Would he be thinking of his family? He'd never been much of a cook, and he spent many nights at the Main Street diner. She too had come back to the lake, escaping the corporate ladder for the hustle and bustle of the small town, taking over the diner from the previous owners. They sat at the same table, night after night, week after week, month after month. She was a strong woman, able to stand on her own 2 feet, and with him as an equal. They'd chosen to walk their paths together, 2 homes and hearts becoming one. She'd know that this was a possibility with his work, and had never failed to say goodbye as he left. Would he take solace in this, knowing that she'd feel sorrow, grief, and pain, but that she'd be able to continue without him? Or would he worry the most about the pain in a tinier heart to a soul that was just beginning to blossom? Ariel was 9 years old, his little girl who he had spent countless hours as a baby just counting 10 fingers and 10 toes. He taught her to ride a bike and throw a ball. They'd planned a camping trip for the summer. What would she think of his never coming back? Would she understand that it was his duty? Would she resent it and him? Would she remember all the times they'd shared? Would he be able to think at all? Would the pain override his thoughts in his last moments? Would his world focus only on that and the sounds that echoed around him? From the initial sound of the gunshot to the impact, the pain in his abdomen, and the retaliatory shot from his partner that took down the killer. They had been called for attempted shoplifting at a gas station near the highway. The cashier had caught him, and one of the customers became concerned when the situation had begun to escalate and called the police. They hadn't known about the gun. They hadn't known that the man had gone off his medications. What he did see was that there was a young boy in the store as well, no more than 12. Felix had gone in to get snacks while his dad filled the truck with gas. It was at him that the gun had been pointed in that moment. It was Felix that was saved when he died. Was it Felix that he thought of? The young boy he'd sacrificed his life to save. How would he spend his second chance at life? Would he go to the funeral and see the little girl crying in a black dress? Would he see her around school as his eyes closed for the last time? Would he see into the future? Felix becoming Ariel's self-appointed big brother and guardian, forever tied together by tragedy. Growing up together at the lake, him pushing her when required and comforting her when needed. Her ensuring that he focused on schoolwork as much as sports. Her scared and angry when he told her he was going to the police academy, that he wanted to help others like her father, who had saved him. Through times of luck and difficulty, Ariel and Felix lived them together. And one day, down by the lake where they had grown up, where her father grew up, Ariel would walk down the aisle to him with her mother by her side. Ariel and Felix would live a long life together at the lake with their family. It wasn't always easy, with fights and sadness, but they came through. When their son was born, they named him Liam, after his grandfather, and sometimes they'd sit on the porch as dusk settled around them, holding hands, thinking about the man who'd given them both so much. Though he would miss all of those moments, the foresight and knowledge that they would be okay, that they'd live a life full of happiness and love, would that give him true peace? For in those 10 seconds, Liam lived.